turns out that the majority of human drugs are tested in canines first. This was surprising to me. And what was additionally surprising to me is if you have good data, nothing happens. Nobody does anything with it. You know, I went to medical school and I now worked in biopharma and all that, right? And so a lot of boxes that I checked here that made me feel like everything has been leading up to this. I just feel really confident based on lessons I've learned in my life previously that this is going to work.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special episode of the Veterinary Roundtable, the podcast where we answer your veterinary-related questions while having some fun along the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice, and if you have any feedback to offer to improve the Veterinary Roundtable, let us know.
Fun fact, I tried to memorize that last episode when you weren't here.
You
I only
did?
got like half of it, I think.
She did pretty good.
Good job. That was like the one day I tried to do it, and I got like, and then you get nervous, like, did I actually do it, or did I not?
I think I got most of it, maybe. I don't remember.
I botched the outro pretty bad.
Did you try to do it from memory?
Well, I don't think we
I
even
think we were
had
just
a
like,
paper.
okay, bye.
We didn't even have an
Oh,
itinerary.
that was the ad-lib episode.
Yes,
Yeah, we
I
didn't have
love
we
those
didn't have a piece of
episodes.
paper. We had nothing to hold.
Yeah.
So we were literally just going based off memory.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think people enjoyed it. I don't know.
I'm sure.
haven't
I
gone
love
back
those
and listened
episodes.
to
Those
it.
were some of my favorite.
You should. I watched some of it.
Oh, no.
Like what? I was just like, what are we talking about? Like we were just acting like complete dorks. I don't know.
Well,
Like we talked about like ground birds.
yeah, we did. See, I already forgot. It was a week ago and I already forgot.
It's easy to do. That's for sure.
Okay, well, before we get into introductions, to remember to look or check out our social media channels. So we have Instagram and TikTok, both at the Veterinary Roundtable. And then we also have a YouTube if you'd like to watch us rather than just listen, the Veterinary Roundtable. And then be sure to check out our text message feature and keep using it. It seems like a pretty great tool. So you click on, you'll be in your podcast provider of choice. Click on the episode that you'd like to watch. There's a little link on the top that says to send us a message here. You click that and then you can type whatever you'd like. If you do want to shout out, you have to include your name. Otherwise, it comes through as anonymous.
Boom.
Boom. There you go.
I'm Dr. Ashlyn Duckwall.
I'm Courtney Allen.
I'm Dr. Emily King.
And we have a special guest. Okay. Just a little bit about him first. He is a human doctor who has a background in human biopharmaceuticals.
I was going to say human.
Human. Okay.
It's a reference from an old podcast.
Yes,
Brian.
yes.
Okay.
He started Periovive after noting the stark difference between the number of human medicines versus veterinary medicines, especially that most human medicines are tested in dogs first. His first product, Periovive, is for dentistry and has already shown exciting results in the real-world practice to match the existing peer-reviewed studies. Please welcome Dr. Bryan Song to the Veterinary Roundtable.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining
We
us
are so
all the way
excited.
from Boston.
Yes. He flew in to be here.
Yeah,
So nice.
it's pretty nice.
How was your
I've never been
travel?
to Indianapolis. No, it was a great flight actually. I was a little concerned. We're experiencing a little bit of nor'easter. Rainy weather, tough conditions, but we got in easy. It's a direct flight, and
Oh, good.
I got an upgrade on the way back. So I'm excited for that
Nice.
too.
The old
This is
upgrade. Did you
exciting.
get a drink with that upgrade?
I think you do. I think you do. American
free
Airlines,
drink?
yeah, you get
With the
free
slightly
drink.
larger seat and
That's-
more footroom.
Exactly.
There you go.
I'm
That's
fired
the way
up.
to do it. That's the way to travel.
It's a bad week here in Indiana
Yeah, I
this
was
week.
gonna
It's
say-
been raining all week. It hasn't stopped raining.
We were hoping it'd be nice for you, and
With the Indy 500, I was telling him, I was like, when you
Yeah.
fly in, you can see the track. A lot of the times when you fly into the Indianapolis airport, you can see the track.
yeah.
Especially because he was coming from the east side,
Yeah.
across. And I was like, you wouldn't have been able to see anything today
Yeah.
because it's just,
Do we know? Is it supposed to be nice for the race?
No,
and
it's supposed
stuff?
to rain on Sunday. That's the second year. It rained last year.
yeah.
Oh,
It downpoured last year, though.
Now, as a person watching it on TV, I do like when it rains. Okay.
It's not blacked out this year. You can watch it on TV.
It's not. Okay. Well, because when Tennessee, so in Indianapolis, they usually for the 500, you can't watch it on TV.
Yeah,
they
they
don't,
block it out.
even though the freaking thing is sold out and is the largest spectacle in racing and in sports, like
Yeah.
as far as number of people at a live event.
Mhm.
You would think that the television, they would just let it be shown on television. They never have
Mhm.
it's been forever this way.
They lifted the blackout last year because of the rain, but this year it's definitely not blacked out.
Yeah.
Which my
and
husband is
so-
very excited
Yeah.
about.
And so it's always been blacked
Yeah.
out. So you would always have to go away from the city to be able to watch it or
Yeah.
figure out how to
Or
pirate
go.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in Tennessee, you can watch it on the TV on the regular sports channel. And there, it is kind of fun when it rains because you can go eat your lunch and then do that, and then you can come back and still watch it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever watched it.
Oh my gosh.
Or
It's
have I never
so
gone?
fun.
I mean, it's been on the TV before.
You've never gone?
It's so
No.
much fun.
How can you be a Hoosier and never gone to the race?
I've never made it a priority.
It's so much fun.
We're changing
mean,
that.
I'm not going to go when
You've
I'm
been,
pregnant.
haven't you?
Yeah, I've been 3 times.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I
not
sit in the
opposed to it.
infield, so
I'm
I
not
sit in the
opposed to
party
it.
section.
You sit in the party.
And we get there
yeah.
at like 6 a.m. And then we grill. And then by the time the race starts, most of my friends are like blackout drunk on the ground.
Yeah, that can happen to
See,
a
I'm
lot of
not-
them.
But I enjoy watching the race.
Do
So
you,
I don't
do you
get...
enjoy racing, Dr. Song? Like, is that something?
I've been to the Talladega 500 when I was
Oh.
a kid. I grew up in Alabama, so I don't think it's as nice as the Indy, but
So you've
one of the
experienced-
big Alabama attractions is definitely Talladega.
Okay.
Talladega Nights.
There you go. Yeah, I did
Movie
see
great.
Ricky Bobby there.
Yeah, Ricky Bobby. Okay.
Well, we digress here.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Let's
I got
get
off
back
topic.
to it.
Okay.
Okay, start by talking to us. I love that. I think it's fascinating you're a human doctor. So did you graduate and go into practice and then start this? Like, what's the story there?
Tell us your journey.
Yeah, so went to Tulane Med down in New Orleans, but somewhere along the way, I decided to go not into practice and instead went into biotech consulting. You're just biotech in general. We don't need to specify that it was consulting to start. And so, yeah, I did that for almost 10 years in the Boston area. Boston, maybe you know, is like the #1 biotech hub of the world. I mean,
Cool.
they got all the, big brains at Harvard and MIT and so on that do a lot of research. And out of that research comes interesting biological innovation. And anyway, while I was on the job, for some of these new drugs that we were working on, we tested them in animals first. And I don't think anybody's surprised by this, but, you start with mice, you might do rats. You almost always do monkey before you start human trials. What came as a surprise to me is we actually did some testing in canines. And I looked into this a little further, and turns out that the majority of human drugs are tested in canines first. And this was surprising to me. And what was additionally surprising to me is if you have good data, nothing happens. Nobody does anything with it. So I looked into this a little further. Basically, you could test a drug in mice and then eventually in dogs and then have it work really well. But it won't be for another like 10, 15 years before it comes all the way back to veterinary medicine. They'll just proceed on to humans and then it'll be a human drug. And again, this is the case even if it works really well. And so this is the last thing I'll say about this is there's 20,000 odd human drugs and then there's 1,000 odd veterinary drugs. And so what you have is a 19,000 drug gap where most of those were tested in dogs at some point or another and presumably shown to work, and nobody's doing anything with them. And so, yeah, I was inspired basically to bridge that gap, and that's how I landed on Periovive eventually.
Yeah.
That's really
That's
cool.
awesome.
One of the things you were talking about at the clinic was that a lot of the companies go back and find these drugs and then repurpose them. And I've always wondered why cats get the short end of the stick, right? Okay, because they do. Like as far as innovation, drug therapy. Is it because the drugs are initially started on canines? So then, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that we're not.
makes
It's not like
sense.
we're testing them on cats before we test them on people.
They're already thinking about
Because they're easier to
dogs
handle?
I mean,
No,
dogs,
let's be honest.
the canine model probably is similar to the human model as far as like, why do they use canines?
So both are true. So yes, there is some similarities between the two. But also lab animals in terms of canines are always beagles.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's always beagles is because beagles are very, they're docile.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was actually really frustrating to learn that because I had a beagle growing up.
Okay.
And so when I learned, because, the truth is lab animals are not treated well, right? And so when I learned this, I was like pretty frustrated and was saying like, well, if you have lab animals that are sacrificing sometimes their lives for this data, then somebody has to get this data out there. It's like a complete shame for it to just not be used if it's good. And so that's something I get pretty fired up about. Especially having a beagle growing up. So
So is it just like nobody had either the finances or company to just take that data directly into the vet world, or is it just like, well, humans are more priority, so it just goes that route and then gets forgotten?
Yeah, I mean, as you might imagine, it mostly comes down to money, right? It's very expensive to develop a drug, and in order to achieve returns on that drug, you need it most likely to work in human medicine, right? Because the human biotech and just healthcare system is much bigger than the veterinary system. So for somebody to go on sort of like a side quest into the veterinary space would be oftentimes financially, it's just not going to work, right? That's a large part of it. I mean, there are other parts, right? Just staying focused on the mission at hand and that type of thing. But again, it's not so much of a side quest. Which is why, I felt like some of these things need to come. And it happens a lot, right? I mean, we talked about it in the clinic, like, a lot of the new drugs in veterinary medicine are just old human drugs that somebody just picked up off the shelf and just said, hey, look, like, let's bring this to market. So, that's how it tends to be, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's
how do you find them? How do you figure out what those drugs are that are potential diamonds in the rough?
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of it's just out there. I mean, they're published in human journals, these studies, or in FDA filings, and you can just read them. And so that's what I did for, the better part of a year, nights and weekends, just reading tons and tons of PubMed articles and whatnot. And I came across some that were interesting, some that were not as interesting. I worked with a family friend. She's a veterinarian also, who is now my chief veterinary officer, Dr. Betsy Smith. And she helped me when I was looking at these be like, oh, this is not really a problem in veterinary medicine, or I would never encounter this case. It's too rare, that type of thing. So that's it's really a paper exercise is what it comes down to. You're just studying and reading, and then just looking at the data, and then if you have conviction about something, pursuing the development.
Wow. So that's how then the birth of Periovive came about, is you found basically articles to support data and then kind of took it from there? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, the main thing first was like there has to be a lot of data, right? Of which there is. There's tons and tons of data supporting the active ingredient is hyaluronic acid, supporting hyaluronic acid not only in human dentistry, but, of course, canine dentistry. So that was the first thing, like, was there a lot of data? And, there was a lot of things like that. But, the second thing that was important is there an unmet need? And dentistry, and I've come to learn, I only learned about this after the fact, but dentistry, there's huge unmet need in veterinary dentistry because the dogs and cats never brush their teeth, right? Can you imagine if we never brushed our teeth, how disgusting our mouths would be and those problems. And anyway, so I only learned about that after the fact, but so there's clear unmet need. And then, as far as other things to check, hyaluronic acid itself, very safe. People are familiar with it. Very easy to use. So I checked a lot of boxes. And so that's why that was the first thing that we went for. I'm hopeful that, if it works out in a big way, then we can go back and pluck some other ones out there. There's just a lot of stuff in the literature that could be interesting. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think a couple people were like joking when we heard it was hyaluronic acid. We're like, can we put it on our faces? Because that's how I know it's derm.
In face stuff.
It's in derm. Yeah, a lot of derm stuff. Obviously.
I checked. It's in the stuff I use.
Nobody do that with this product. We are joking.
It's
Let's do a disclaimer.
No, just kidding.
Please don't put it in your face. But I know that people have done it. So watch out.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of students who listen to the podcast. And so can you explain to them what hyaluronic acid is, why it's important, that kind of thing. So we give them a little bit of an education on the topic.
Yeah, so hyaluronic acid it's an extracellular scaffold. So in other words, there are all these gaps between your cells, right? And all hyaluronic acid does is hold that stuff together. You can imagine it's like the framework of your house, or, like just the gunk, the interstitial gunk in between cells and things. It's composed of very long disaccharide chain, like repeats, basically, which, in English is like basically just long strings of carbons and little sugars. And that just, it's negatively charged. And so it holds things together. And so, yeah, how does it work in the context of all the things that it works in? So we're talking about moisturizer, right? It's that compound is highly hydrophilic, so it soaks in moisture, and then it just generally provides lift and structure to connective tissue, right? And so in the case of moisturizer, you want to look young, you get rid of the
Like
wrinkles.
Lift and structure.
Yeah,
I need lift and structure.
But in the case of, say, wounds or trauma, right, hyaluronic acid also plays a role, also providing, I guess, lift and structure, right? Because when you have a cut or something, right, your epithelium gets all disrupted, and you want to have something that's, holding it together so that you can heal around it, right? And so, yeah, that's what hyaluronic acid is and does, and it's ubiquitous in all extracellular life. So it's the same exact chemical structure in dogs and cats and humans and giraffes and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what does Periovive target, or how is it labeled to be used?
So exactly. So for dentistry, if you imagine periodontal disease, right, it's essentially just a chronic wound, right? So if you just never brush your teeth, right, you have bacteria and it's just eating away at the gum, and that gum is just, like a big chronic wound, constantly bleeding, constantly trying to heal. And what hyaluronic acid does is you can put it in there, and you can provide some structure to that wound, and that will activate the endogenous processes in your body to heal it. So like you have white cells and osteoblasts and osteoclasts. These are things that you learn about that are builder cells, basically, and hyaluronic acid provides the scaffold that you can build onto.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, it makes sense because I mean, just like you said, in our world, it's literally, if I have an owner say they brush their animal's teeth once a day, I'm like, wow, you're doing
Better
a
than
lot better than most
anybody,
of the population. If you do it once a week, even better. Like anything is better than nothing. But I think it's so interesting when we have this division in our field of we try to educate owners on oral health and how it's beneficial for the dog's health or the cat's health overall, but then it comes down to actually getting the full dental cleaning, and it's no way I'm not spending that money. So it's a very interesting dynamic in our field of trying to convince them the importance of it and how to get them healthy, but then crossing that bridge of the financial component of convincing them to do it. I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges I face every day is that conversation of convincing them, like, no, this is a big deal. Like, even though they can live without teeth, that doesn't mean they should.
Yeah.
I think that's a bigger hurdle there. But okay, so because of periodontal disease, is that how you got the name Periovive? How does one come up with a product name?
Yes. How does that work?
Yeah, so I can't take credit for it. We have a great graphic designer who helps us, and he said, well, I was originally going to do Periopet.
Okay.
But somebody already owns a trademark for that, and I don't know what they're doing with it. It's just sitting out there. So I was thinking, like, what could it be? What could it be? And he said, make it Periovive, where the vive is revive. So it's periodontal revive, Periovive.
Okay.
Genius.
Sometimes people call it Periovive or Vive, and I'm like, that's probably a little cooler. But yeah, Periovive. Yeah, Periovive, life, right? So, Periovive is, I guess, what it's supposed to be, but I don't care what people call it.
Yeah. Just buy it.
Just buy it.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Okay. So then I guess I'm always intrigued, like the manufacturing process, like how you start, obviously don't give away your secrets, but like starting with the formula, how it comes to fruition, like what's the timeline that you have looked at over this product?
Yeah. So, it takes some time, but less time than you think, right? Call it 9 months to a year of getting it all set up and up and going. The truth is like, there are many organizations out there that they're called contract research organizations or contract development and manufacturing organizations. So CRO and CDMO is what the acronyms that people use. And in my old role in human medicine, right, you hire those people to do some of this stuff for you, right? And I asked an old buddy, if
he's got buddies,
he's got a lot of friends, everyone.
if he could help me with this, and he actually said, that's a little too easy for what we do. We do more complicated stuff, and so then he punted me to somebody else who ended up handling all that. And so if you provide them even a general idea, but in my case, I already had like a formula in mind and things. They'll they can execute on that stuff for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So then you said 9 months to a year is by the time you had the product in your hand to sell it then?
That's right. But it's a little different because hyaluronic acid is, it's been out for a long time. It's not something new, right? And it's generally recognized as safe. That's actually a technical term, like generally recognized as safe. And so, while there are other hurdles, like, a recent episode, you talked to the clinical operations lead at Loyal, and she went through the whole rigmarole of testing and FDA requirements and so on. Hyaluronic acid isn't subject to those things because it's already approved for other things.
Okay.
It's generally recognized as safe and so on and so forth. And it's a lot. I mean, what she's doing is really impressive, and I've had to deal with that in my old life. So really impressive stuff. But I'm happy to not do that for this case.
It sounds very stressful and chaotic, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people thrive under that. So
did you not have to do, since it's already a safe product, you didn't have to do like the what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, like the studies and everything.
Clinical trials and
stuff.
But
so that's the nice thing is somebody's already done a lot of those studies, right? They were already tested extensively in canines. There's 5 canine studies as a monotherapy, and then actually additional canine studies as a combo therapy. And there are actually studies in, sort of unexpected, of course, mice, but unexpected species like sheep and rabbits and so on. So a lot of that's already out there. And listen, like, there's a lot of stuff already out there anyway, right? So I think I said it earlier, like if we can get this one off the ground, you could do it again.
Yeah, right? Yeah, absolutely. You're like an entrepreneur in medicine.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of always wanted to be, sort of doing my own thing, and had some stuff that didn't work out, maybe, but this is something that hope with the signs are good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Also, don't discredit yourself. You had to go through all that data.
Yeah,
I read some PubMed articles and they are snooze sometimes.
Snooze, I know, right? Exactly.
I mean, unless you like that type of reading, I don't know. I typically don't.
I don't think anybody likes that reading. Snooze is right. When my son was born, I would read him PubMed articles, and hopefully that would put him to sleep. But I was also kind of hoping it would make him smarter too. But yeah, totally.
That's genius. So is he reciting PubMed articles? Do you know?
No, hopefully he doesn't go into technical biotech type of thing. But we'll see. He's just 3 right now. But
so when you're analyzing, and this would be great for people to understand, when you're analyzing an article or a PubMed article, what is it that you're looking for to know that you have, like, can you tell people, like, because this happens to us a lot, like with a drug rep will come in and be like, hey, here's this study and this, and you're like, okay, this all sounds really good. This is, I just need to do this.
To results?
Yeah. Do you read discussion and results, conclusion, or do you like, what should people be looking at to understand that a study is a viable source?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's great. There are some shortcuts that are, a little bit more qualitative, but, you can start with the easy shortcuts, like how reputable is the journal and so on and so forth, right? But yeah, when you're really thinking about it, if you've read a lot of them, you can kind of go through it quickly. But you of course want to look at the trial design, right? And, the important things are, is it double-blinded? Was there a placebo? Or sometimes you want an active comparator, right? So if there's already a drug used common, like let's say you came out with a new antibiotic, right? You would want the active comparator to not be placebo. You'd want it to be clindamycin or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that setup is important, right? Again, you want it to be double-blinded because you don't want there to be bias. You definitely want there to be some comparator arm, whether it's placebo or not. And then you start thinking to yourself, all right, so what's like a meaningful endpoint, right? So let's talk about duration. So in the Periovive's case, right, patients are only getting the dentistry once every year if you're lucky, right? And so you want the endpoint to be out to a year at least. And some of these studies are 3 months, some of them are 12 months, and some of them are out to 18 months, right? And so that's something that you should keep an eye on, right? Is like the thing that's actually being tested something that I actually care about, right?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is like, okay, so how well did it do, right? So like in oncology, which is where I spend a lot of my time in the human side of things, it's like you come out with a new drug for lung cancer, right? And they say, oh, it was a statistically significant improvement in response rate, right? But the improvement, even if it is statistically significant, was like 10%, right? And it's like, all right, so then what are we really doing here? It's that's not really that interesting, right? So, I guess in summary, right, you want to make sure the study was set up well, and then you want to make sure that you actually care about what came of it, right? And if you had to skip all of it, maybe you would just go straight to the end and ask about like, does this like in a vacuum, does this actually mean something to me?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of weaker studies out there, and especially if you have the option between multiple drugs, you do want to spend a little bit more time looking at that setup if you can.
Yeah.
So,
well, what I thought was interesting in the 5 animal studies was that they did what did you call it, where it was half the mouth and half the mouth?
Split mouth.
Yeah, split mouth. So half the mouth was treated and the other half was not, right? And so then you're comparing the same animal.
That's cool.
So it removes like differences between patients as far as, so I thought that was really interesting, which is like, I mean, it makes sense, but I mean.
Yeah. So does that value of only 5 animals though lessen the viability of the study because there's only 5?
No, 5 studies.
Oh, 5 studies
5 animal
were done.
studies. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know how many patients were in each one of those studies.
Okay, gotcha.
But
I feel like that's a low number.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about dental studies is you can do a split mouth, right? Which you can't really do. Like imagine trying to do a study where you only used half of like,
one
you
leg.
Just can't do it, right?
Split leg study.
Yeah, you just can't do that, right?
It's not going to be accepted.
So that's the nice thing about dental studies. And the other nice thing about dental studies is you can each tooth is its own site.
Oh, that's true.
So so you don't actually need so many patients, but to get a pretty high comparison. But yeah, you're right. Split mouth enables basically the cleanest comparator that you can get.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I'm trying to think of any other like body ears, maybe, but then you can get ears. You could.
It would have to be a very specific ear medication,
or it would just have to be allergic ear disease. Maybe then you could do a split.
Yeah, I was just thinking of other things to split, but I don't think anything else really makes sense. All I remember is like p-values from research.
Right. Yeah.
And if the p-value is something, it means something.
See, you remember the important things.
no, I don't, because I don't know what it's supposed to be. I would look at that and be like, okay. Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about on the podcast quite a bit is just because people write in and ask us questions and, they struggle with change or they struggle with maybe taking a new direction in their life. And, or do they have the courage to make that change or do something different? What did that feel like when you quit your job and then went all in, with this? Like, how did you wrap your brain around that? What was that thinking like? How did it feel?
I've talked to my wife about this actually a fair amount, where it's like, it does feel like, and maybe this is like back rationalizing or whatever, but everything feels like it led up to this moment, right? I have tried a couple other entrepreneurial endeavors, sort of side hustle type stuff, like I know you play tennis, and I play tennis, and I had like this little tennis app that I tried, and so that sort of prepared me just from like an entrepreneurial standpoint, like what's involved in that. But then, of course, you have, I went to medical school, and I now worked in biopharma and all that, right? And so altogether, there were just, again, like a lot of boxes that I checked here that made me feel like, okay, everything has been leading up to this. And so I just feel really confident based on lessons I've learned in my life previously that this is going to work. Now, confident is too strong of a word. Like I'm not even fully confident today. Yeah. But, those were the things, like, you draw upon your experience, and then, you ask friends and family and and mentors and stuff. But at the end of the day, like, it is a leap, and I'm pretty happy about it right now, but there are times when you're not happy about it. You're like stressed and stuff. So
what do you tell yourself when you're in one of those places where you feel like you're on the struggle bus?
Yeah.
And like, did I really make the right decision?
Yeah.
What do you find you tell yourself?
Yeah. So I like to make like contracts with myself, I guess.
Okay.
Where it's like, all right, I'm going to try this for 1 year.
Okay.
And sort of no matter what happens, like, I'm just going to go for the year, and then we can reassess at the end. And then I might even say, like, this is the goal for the year, and if I hit that goal, then I know that I can just keep going for another year, or if I can't go, then I just, we pivot or something, right? And so, yeah, if I'm like depressed, I'm like, okay, look, you promised yourself you're going to try for a year, so just keep going, right? And so that's the type of thing that is helpful. And then yeah, I have great, my wife is amazing, and she's like supportive and so on. So you surround yourself with good people. But yeah, those are the types of things that I think about when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
Very like self-motivated and accountability. And I mean, I think it's very applicable to a lot of our listeners are trying to get into vet med or vet school or in vet school. Like those lessons that you're speaking to are very applicable to if they're in the gutters, the thick of it of school in general or coming out of school. So
especially new veterinarians and feeling like, okay, did I make the right decision? Am I going to be any good at this? I mean, I think what you said about giving yourself like these benchmarks or these goal points, to get to, because otherwise I think like if you're living in the day in, day out, then it gets really noisy. Like it's really hard to be like, I guess, to settle yourself back down.
Yeah.
At least that's what it seems like to me. Like, whereas if you look at it and you use longer periods of time, then it just feels better.
Yeah.
More rewarding.
Yeah.
And like you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
When you can look back on the year that you committed to and say, I did this.
I did this. Yeah.
So what's like one of the biggest lessons, or not lessons, what's one of the biggest takeaways you've learned through starting Periovive? Like whether that has to do with pharmaceuticals, business, I don't know, anything. Like, is there something you're like, wow, I've learned a lot through this?
Well, Dr. King was teasing me about it earlier, but the term that a nice phrase that I heard is life is a contact sport. and
Not tennis, though. Very interesting.
yeah, tennis could be a contact sport
You
too,
can
maybe,
make it a contact.
depending on who you're playing.
That's right.
That's right.
But anyway, yeah, you meet people and you talk to them and you follow up with them, or they follow up with you, and you just put yourself out there, and that's been really amazing in this process, because look, like, I had no exposure to veterinary anything. I have one family friend who's a veterinarian, and then I just went into this. And I'll actually say this about veterinary medicine in particular. I mean, it's different from human medicine in that veterinarians are a very friendly bunch. Like, people have been extremely forthcoming, and I'll connect you with so-and-so, and you should talk to so-and-so, and this is really cool, and so on and so forth. It can be a little bit sharper elbows, I think, back in my old life. And so anyway, that was a huge lesson, and a really cool. It's just like, send the email, or go to the conference, or just meet the person, or and so on. So that's been really amazing. So there you go.
Could you have imagined that you would go to a big vet conference?
I was going to ask about that. He was at VMX.
Yeah. Have you gone to several, or just VMX?
I've been in a bunch of them now. VMX, WVC, a bunch of smaller ones too. I mean,
and you were at the live show at VMX, right?
Yes.
I was gonna ask if you were
Yeah.
going to any other conferences, but
no, it's been incredible, right? Seeing all the, I mean, and then, they're more fun than the human conferences, right?
Okay,
That's
that's
awesome.
good to know. Good to
Well, you're
know.
not going to have like the puppy playpen like at the American Society of Hematology. Like, it's not going to happen, right? At VMX, they had the exotics guy walking around with the iguana and the armadillo, and so yeah, it's just it's a livelier atmosphere, I would say.
Yeah. When you bring puppies and kittens into the mix, I mean,
there was
you go.
also ponies.
Yeah, that's
There
true.
were
ponies,
And crepes.
The grapes.
Yeah.
There were so many things. I mean, VMX is just its own entity. It's
Sure,
just
yeah.
amazing.
It really is.
But I mean, maybe human med needs to take lessons from.
Just
That's
bring
one-
in some
that's
puppies.
one
You know,
thing
we're
that
constantly
the human
taking lessons
side-
from human med. Maybe
Yeah.
this is
Right.
a place that human med could learn something about.
Yeah, they're a little behind in that
Yeah,
aspect.
we
Totally.
need to get some puppies
Look at
and
us
kittens.
go.
We're behind
Go
in
Vet
everything
Med.
else.
Yeah, we are, but that's okay. We're good on
We're getting
conferences.
there.
Oh gosh.
Okay. So, where can people find your product, learn more about all the nitty-gritty details of how to use your product, all that stuff?
Yeah, so Periovive, you can just go to periovive.com. A lot of info there. You can email me directly. I'm not Zoetis, so you can just reach out to me.
Straight to the source.
There's no
yeah,
layers there,
yeah.
you mean?
Yeah, it's just Bryan, Bryan at periovive.com. And yeah, we just came out last fall, and but growth is really it's picking up, and
It's wonderful.
we have different CA opportunities and so on and so forth, and you can buy us on VetCove or just on our website or on Patterson and so on. So yeah, it's been a fun ride so far, and hopefully not done anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I think
awesome.
there's good things to come. There's a lot of applications,
Yes.
and with the ease of use and everything, I think it's going to be a big thing for people to be able to have in their hands. People want their pets, their problems resolved in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything you can do to shorten that time frame, the better you're going to look and feel about that care of that patient. So I think that's...
And people want the best for their pet.
Yeah.
And when you keep continuously trying to research and find new best products to make
They
that
appreciate
happen,
that, yeah.
exactly, they're going to be open to it. So
Yeah.
Plus makes our job easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We're all for it.
Yeah, for
all
sure.
around very great.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Anything else you
I
want
was
to
gonna say,
share
anything
before
else?
we close out the podcast?
No, I mean, just what y'all doing is really cool. I mean, this is a really cool platform. Y'all are talking honestly and openly just about different issues with different people. I've been listening to the last few episodes, and folks you've been bringing on are really cool. And so congratulations on
Thank
everything
you.
put together.
Thank you
It's
very
really
much.
cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here in person.
In person,
Yeah.
I know.
We
It's
love
very
it.
cool.
We don't
We
have
love
very
it.
many in-person
Yeah,
guests.
I know.
the in-person
Exciting
guests
trip.
are awesome. So
Sorry our weather sucks, but
yes,
next time. Alrighty. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable. Remember, send in those questions and leave us a review if you enjoyed this episode or previous one. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable.
Thank you very much.
That's it.